Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, this here is my second podcast. My main one, Mod Chat, is a little more edited, a little more structured, and it's where I come on and I talk to you all about the world of video game modding, video game console modding, and some newer developments that I find cool, interesting, maybe do a little bit of show and tell, give my opinion on them, things like that, and kind of just try to inform the masses over things that I think are cool in the scenes out there. However, this is not Mod Chat. This is Mario's Minute, my second podcast where I come on here and I talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't. I try and alternate that between months, and last month was a guest episode, a fun one as well too. So this month we're going to be doing a solo episode. Now this here is when I, as I said, come on here, talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. And there's a couple ways that you can consume this. The first way is through the video visual version here on the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels, and that's usually where most people listen to this, or I guess kind of watch it. There's not all too much to watch. There's just, my channel art and a cool looking visualizer. At least I think it's cool looking. And secondly, you can take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to, like an actual podcast. If you look up Mario's Minute on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, you should be able to find it. I know it's not available on all the platforms, but it is available on most of them. Either way, like I said multiple times here, I kind of just come on here, talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. I rarely even do all too much editing on here, so it's kind of one of those things. There's not too much going on, but you know what? I think that kind of makes up for it with a bit of heart and a bit of passion in here. It's where I get a little bit personal. It's like my one outlet, at least here on the channel, aside from a one-off video here and there. Either way, I do have a few topics here that I want to talk about, and I think it was one of those months where I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but I was like, there's some things that are annoying me, some things that are exciting me, and I can put them into a list. So one of the first things I want to talk about, and I'm just going to say as well too, I'm going to be doing a little bit of complaining here. It's going to be cathartic, and maybe some people can agree with what I'm going to be saying here. But the first thing is going to be really, when it comes to software, especially modern software, something I've just been kind of dealing with more so, but now I'm just like, we're kind of in this transitionary period, I suppose, and I actually want to give some credit to that, but I am going to talk about that in a bit. That's kind of leading to, at least right now, the enshittification of everything. And if you haven't heard that term, I'm actually going to, define it here. According to Wikipedia, it was defined by Cory Doctorow in 2022, so it's still a new word, but if you haven't heard it, it's also known as, well, they say on here on Wikipedia, it's also known as crapification and platform decay. Is a pattern in which two-sided online products and services decline in quality over time. And that is something I just want to talk about here because, I had a little bit of an annoying moment. Now, I built a new computer this year. Thankfully, I was in a position I was able to do that, and I was like, before prices maybe not go up, we're not going to see, we're unsure of what's going on, let me just build out a new desktop. It's something I've honestly been overdue on for maybe, to be honest, 2-3 years. I really should have done it earlier, but it was kind of at the point, I was talking with one of my best friends, and I talked about this in a previous episode, but I was talking with him about it, and he kind of brought up the point and said, you could wait until near the end of the year to get discounts on parts and all that stuff. The thing is, we don't know what's going to happen. So the thing is about it, can you afford to be priced out of building a new desktop if you need to build one later on in the year? Because originally I was going to try and just kind of suffer on with my old desktop. Angel was great, don't get me wrong, but I the way I used Angel, the way I was really pushing that computer for a while, and in short, that was a i7 6700K with a little bit of an overclock, a GTX 1080 Ti, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. Great computer, don't get me wrong, but it was just really starting to show its age with the programs I was using. I also put on Windows 11, even though it wasn't officially supported, but it was on there and it worked well enough. But I was just running into a lot of little issues here and there. That was really just kind of with the age of the hardware and how much I had used it. So my friend was saying, can you afford to be priced out of not building a new computer later on, meaning you still have to carry on with this one? And I was like, no. No. I was able to do that a few years ago, and I did. But if it's at the point where it's like near the end of 2025 and computer parts are so expensive that I can't build a new computer, then no. So I'm just going to bite the bullet. And earlier this year, I ended up doing it. So I'm kind of in this phase right now where quite literally the desktop that I am running, and this is let me see, it is running I ended up going AMD this time around, but it's running a 9950X and a RTX 5070, and I end up putting 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM in here, and it's been great. For what I've been doing, it's quiet. It's pretty great. The issue is I'm now running the most powerful computer I've ever owned. And it's not like, oh, this just a new computer. It's like, no, it's got some beef. It's got some real heft to it. Like, it's great. But because of where software is at overall in the current sphere in 2025, there's also things that it's struggling with that it just shouldn't struggle with. And this is kind of what led me to have this moment, right? And by the way, before I forget the credit, I do want to give credit to Grimdoomer, not just for Bad Update and the other awesome stuff he's done, but we had a little bit of an exchange on Twitter, and he was talking about how games just aren't really as well optimized and such, and he ended up putting this pretty well. He said that right now, at least in terms of gaming, but I think with just computers overall, but right now we're kind of in that transitionary phase. Kind of like back in the day when Crysis came out, and then computers had to kind of, and software as well too, and drivers and everything, had to kind of catch up to adequately handle and play Crysis. But like for a few years, PC gaming just kind of sucked back then because everything was, there was new stuff coming out, there were new improvements, but it wasn't working as well as it should have. So he said just the downside is right now we're kind of in that transitionary period, and that's frustrating, to put it lightly. But one moment I ended up having was, look, I'm just going to say, I run Windows 11 as my main OS, right? I know people can yell at me and say, dude, run Linux. I have nothing against Linux. I just use Windows as my main operating system, okay? Let's just keep it at that. But also, even with all this, I'm like, you know, I should be able to have a decent Windows experience here. So I have Windows 11, you know, since it's all new parts, I was able to do the whole like secure boot, TPM 2.0, all that stuff. That was fair. I didn't have to do any registry hacks or any of that fun stuff. I did set up with like an offline account and all that too, so I had to, I guess, use like the little tweaks that you can put into the installer for Rufus, but outside of that, it's pretty bog standard. I've done a few registry hacks here and there. Like one of the things was I actually ranted to some people about this. I ended up going in and I disabled search results, like online web search results in the start menu. Because not only when I bring up the start menu and I'm searching for something, I only want to bring up stuff that's on my local drives on my computer, but also when you're doing all of those like web calls and everything, it ends up slowing down the search. So I'm doing it, but I think it prioritizes it because like I'll look up something before I made this change. I'll look up something and I'm like, why am I getting search results and it takes an extra 3 seconds and I'm running this on a nice SSD. It takes like an extra 2 or 3 seconds to bring up the application I'm looking for. Then I hit enter, but no, then another thing populates and it brings up a weird setting or an uninstaller or something and it brings that up. So, there's a lot to love and a lot to hate there. I'll just say that. But the issue I ran into was having a newer computer. I was looking into the BIOS updates and the driver updates, and I usually keep mine up to date, but I'll be honest with BIOS, it's kind of one of those things, I kind of just update it when I remember to update it. So I said, you know, let me look into the motherboard here. Let me grab the model. Let me see what is going on with this. There ended up being several updates since I ended up building this computer, but even I was good about it. At least when I built it initially several months ago, I did make sure I had the latest BIOS update. I know I'm not using the right term, but I call it BIOS, okay? I know it's UEFI, but I got the latest update. I flashed it over. It was all good. So I went there. I found the update. BIOS updates are 32 megabytes now. Maybe they're bigger, I'm not sure, but mine is 32 megabytes. It's funny because then I'll update like older PCs and it's like a 200 or 500 kilobyte file, whatever it is. I understand how that is. I understand how it goes. It's just, it's a funny thing for me, right? Just to see a BIOS update be that large. So I went through, I, rebooted my system. I was spamming the delete key. I went into the flasher on the interface and then I ended up flashing the latest update. Took a few minutes. We were all good. it ends up booting into Windows 11, and within like a minute of hitting my desktop, I end up getting an error stating that I need to sign back into my account. I'm like, well, hold on. I mean, I signed into like the Windows account. That was okay, but what's going on? So I will say this. It's because of the services and how I use this here and such. I end up using the Office 365 suite. I was using prior to that. I was using the like the perpetual like Office suite and such. But for how like my setup is and everything on here for that, I'm using the Office 365 service. There's a few things I use on it that are pretty great, admittedly. So that's why I use that. Either way, I end up using that, and I found out that was it. Because then if I open up any of my Office related applications, they all said I had to sign back into my account. Then I would try to sign into the account, and it would end up giving a generic error in some way. So then I was looking into this. My first thought was initially, it hopefully didn't, but there's a chance that BIOS could have reset some of my settings. So I went back into the BIOS. The TPM was enabled. The TPM had not changed. Secure boot was enabled as well. So I'm like, okay, well, the installation, all the settings are fine, so this should work. I boot back into Windows 11, it's still giving me the same issues, right? So I end up going in there, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening, and somehow I end up like going through another interface, and this other one, I don't remember how, but I end up going somewhere else, and it ended up giving me a more verbose error. I actually got an error code, but it even said something along the lines of there was an issue with the TPM. And that's actually what prompted me to check mine. So there was an issue with the TPM. I said, okay, it's enabled, that's fine. But when I looked further into that, I had no idea that you could clear out a TPM within the operating system. I went into the Windows 11 settings, I cleared out the TPM, and there was even a process there. It even warns you. It says, hey, if you do this, there's a chance that you're going to experience data loss. Are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. And it even has a reason, like if you're running Windows Server, it looks like that. It even asks you to provide a reason why you are doing this, because you shouldn't be doing it. And one of them is straight up an error code. It's straight up saying, I have this error code right here. Which mine was not the exact same one, but it was similar enough, and I was just trying to figure it out. So I picked that one, I cleared the TPM, it restarts my computer. Come back on, exact same issue, right? So I'm just there, I'm like, okay, all the settings are fine. I cleared the TPM in the OS, which I didn't even know you could do, and I'm still getting this. I looked it up further, and I'm not sure if a standard uninstall would have been okay, but I ended up getting onto I think it was the sysadmin subreddit, and there was somebody maybe 2 years ago who ended up detailing an excellent comment about this, where they said, yep, we've run into this here, this is what you need to do. And it essentially came to going to a certain setting, signing out of the Office suite, then uninstalling the entire Office suite, then going into the registry editor, deleting a registry key, and then going into somewhere in the System32 folder, I know we're getting into dangerous territory here, and renaming one of the folders. I was able to do all that except the folder there. It was just there was some process holding on to it, so I just restarted the computer. I was able to go back in. I was able to rename it. And then from there, I ended up uninstall. Well, I already uninstalled it. Like, I did the uninstall already. I went in, I downloaded the latest build. I was able to install it. I was able to sign back into my account, and then everything worked. But the downside with all of that, like running into everything there, it's just by the time I was done, I looked at it and I'm like, you know, all I did was update the BIOS on my computer. I was trying to do something good, and I don't regret doing that. I was trying to do something safe for the machine. Again, I don't regret doing that. But all I did was update the BIOS, and that was enough to completely break and lock me out of my Office installation. And some people might say, well, dude, all you have to do is uninstall, reinstall it. But out of all my years of using the Office suite, and I think the first Office suite I ever used was Office 97, right? So I've used 97, 2000, 2003. I wasn't really crazy about that one. I'm of the opinion 2000 was pretty great, and we didn't really need to move on too much from that. But then I used, newer builds and such as well, too. And I've used them on different platforms as well. But that was the only time it's ever gotten to the point where it was that bad. I've never run into an Office registration issue like that. And that was just so frustrating to deal with because I'm like, I ended up spending like 30 minutes on this that I really didn't need to. And again, the trigger for this was I was trying to do something good for my computer. I was updating the BIOS. That was it. Frustrating, man. Frustrating. Another frustrating thing has been a wonderful Microsoft I guess this, again, Windows 11. This is actually just Windows 11 here. A KB, an update that ended up going out. And I'm checking this out on PC World here. I just did this. It was for August 2025, so it's been pretty new. And I need to tell some friends about this too. I was talking to my girlfriend about it, and even like she was kind of just in disbelief of this because like I even just went to her computer and I was like, hey, I got to do this thing to your computer real quick. There is an update, and you can look this up. It is KB5063878. This is one of those like general security updates that Microsoft pushes out for Windows 11. This ended up going out, and it's just killing SSDs. And it's not just causing data corruption. It's not nuking the file system on there. Like, there's people who say their SSDs are disappearing from Windows. They go into disk management. They can't find them in there. They go into BIOS. And even though they have the SSD physically connected to their computer, BIOS can no longer find the SSD. This is very bad. This is very bad right here, especially when Windows 11, let's just be real here, you can run it on a hard drive, but just because you can run it on a hard drive does not mean you should run it on a hard drive. In my opinion, any Windows past Windows 7 needs to be on a SSD. Windows 8, Windows 8.1, those were like the last ones where you could use a hard drive on there because that's when, SSDs were starting to become more affordable and more plentiful. But even then, I've tried Windows 8 on a hard drive. I tried 8.1 on a hard drive, not great. Just not great experiences. That's really the last one, though. But even in my opinion, anything higher than 7 needs to be installed on a SSD. Even 7, I put that on SSD before. Fantastic. You just have to go in. There's like a few things you need to tweak and disable and such because you don't want things like defragging to be on there. Windows 8 was the first one where it already had like some predispositions in there. Where it's like, hey, if you have a hard drive this is installed to, we're going to set these settings as default. If you have an SSD, here's the settings by default. So you didn't really have to tweak too much on there. So I just think you should use an SSD for a boot drive either way. But if for some reason you're still keeping a hard drive around, you really need to run Windows 11 on an SSD. Like, it is completely optimized for that by being unoptimized. But what happened on there was this update ended up rolling out, and like I said, it's been causing SSDs to disappear, or even worse, just not recognizing at all. It seems like here, again, I'm reading this on PC World, it's talking about it, and they state here, according to Windows latest, the problem only occurs when an SSD is already more than 60% utilized. Mine was still under that. 60% utilized, and then around 50 gigabytes or more of data is continuously written. They say here, continued, long story short, most users shouldn't actually run into this problem. However, in the rare case that you end up affected by it, you may notice one or more of these failures. 1. File Explorer may hang or crash. 2. Smart becomes unreadable. 3. Input-output errors occur. Or 4. The storage drive disappears. And when I read into this, I immediately jumped on uninstalling this because I have been, like the last week, here and there, I've been running into the File Explorer being worse than usual. And keep in mind, it's not like it was perfect, right? There's times where it's like, oh, I'm just copying and pasting a file, and then when the File Explorer becomes unresponsive, and then you have to, restart the File Explorer. I was also running into this thing. This now makes sense. There were several times my start menu just broke. I would click, left click on the start menu, and it would not pop up at all. So if I wanted to turn off or restart my computer, I'd have to right click on it, and that still worked, thankfully, and then I'd go to shut down or sign out, and then I would either hit shut down or I would restart it. But I noticed that recently, and those are the things I was running into. Now, even with me, I was experiencing those side effects, and I have an SSD exclusively for my applications. I put games on here too, Steam games and stuff. So it's for my applications, which includes games and of course the operating system. They're all on one drive, and I'm looking at it, and it's about a third of the way full. So it's not even close to 60% utilized but I was running into some of those issues there. So when I saw that, I was also like, well, there's also big files I deal with, and especially rendering videos as well too. Yeah, you're churning and burning and running through a whole lot of big files there. So I immediately went in, I uninstalled that update, let the system reboot. I did this on my laptop and again, like my girlfriend's desktop as well. So I went in there, rebooted. I looked into this. There is you could just look up like blocking a Windows 11 update, and there's an application you can use, and it looks like it's going to be deprecated at one point, but there's like a package that you can install from Microsoft where it's kind of just a troubleshooter package. You can go there, you can run it after you've uninstalled it, and it will go through and you can pick an update to hide. And then what you can do is just pick that individual update, because I'm like, well, I still don't want to completely pause or block updates on here because there's going to, hopefully, I'm going to have faith that hopefully there's going to be some good ones, but it's just this one exact update in particular. I don't want this on any of my systems. So you can go into that troubleshooter. You can then check the box on that one. Again, it's going to be KB5063878. I recommend, please, if you have Windows 11 installed, even if you don't have an SSD, if you have Windows 11 installed, just go in there, uninstall that update, and then hide it. And when you hide it, you're not going to be able to reinstall it. And if you don't want to go through the process of hiding it, you can also just pause Windows updates. I know this one is bad enough because I've been reading up on this one, right? I know this one is bad enough that not only it's completely killing SSDs, and it seems to be an issue with how Windows is interfacing with the controllers on the SSDs. Not even the storage itself on there. It's the actual controller. So, like for example, if you have like a Samsung 990 Pro and it uses a Phison controller on there, it's causing issues for that controller, and I believe it's causing these drives to fail. That's what I believe on there. So that's the issue that's coming up with this, where it's like, well, if you're just using your computer in a standard way, you don't really expect it, you're getting the latest updates, you're trying to be a good person with your computer here and trying to practice that, stay in good practice. See, I can't even talk like that. Stay in good practice and kind of like sanitize your PC like that in a way, just stay up to date, hoping everything's going to be good. You can get screwed over by this here, which is really disappointing. So I know it's at the point it's bad enough that I don't even know if Microsoft has pulled the update. I actually don't know. I just know my computer's had it. I uninstalled it. I hit it. They're not getting that update again. And other issue was they as in Microsoft, they're actually working with SSD manufacturers and controller manufacturers as well too to see what's going on. I was kind of like half joking about this, but I was even saying like, I'm sure Physon's not too they're not too happy about it, because they're kind of, and I'm sure of course other SSD manufacturers, because it's kind of like, dude, we didn't do anything. Our drives have been fine. Our controllers have been fine. Like, all of this was okay until you all issued one update, and now this is happening. I do know that there are lists that people are compiling to see which SSDs could be affected. I didn't even bother to look at that list. Like, my laptop, actually all the computers I had it installed on, all of them only use the internal drives are flash storage. That's it. But I did see one person, they were running into an issue on like a Samsung 980 Pro, and I'm like, that is pretty close, if not the same thing of what I have, so I'm going to uninstall this now. But like I said, even like this 60% thing, the 60% utilization, I'm not saying that's incorrect, but I'm saying my drive is about 30% utilized, and I was running into those File Explorer issues and even like start issues. And I swear, too, the funny thing is, I swear, once I ended up uninstalling it and I rebooted a couple times, my computer was running better. So I'm like, great, you uninstall and update, it ends up working better. And this was not like, I'm not in any of those beta channels. I'm not in any of the early channels. I'm not running, I'm just running the stable release. It's ironic to say, but I'm just trying to run the stable release. I'm not trying to run like any early build or any advanced build or any beta build or testing build of Windows 11. Just the latest stable channel. That's what I run, and this got hit. So that's frustrating. That's certainly frustrating. That's what I'm complaining about it, but I'm also trying to warn you all. I don't know by the time, because I'm recording this a few days before it goes live, I do not know if, I'm sure it's going to be fixed. So I don't know when this is going to be fixed. I don't know what update is going to fix this here. But again, before I get off this topic, I recommend to you all, if you have any SSDs in your computer, you're running Windows 11, even if you don't use SSDs on there, just find this update and uninstall it. and then either pause updates for a bit or download the troubleshooter tool. I have it here. It is WU showhide diagcab. That's diagcab. You can look that up. It's an official diagnostic tool from Microsoft. You can go in there, you can hide that update, so therefore it will not install on your computer again. So computers have just been, they've been great. They've been great. I know not mine here, but of course we ran into the issue as well too with Intel, where I know this was in the past like year or so, where there were like multiple generations. I think there was like 1 or 2 generations of Intel CPUs where they had that microcode issue and they were just crashing. And I know what came out of that was essentially they said, hey, I think at the time, because it's resolved now, but if I remember correctly, at the time it was essentially you could have like build like the latest, greatest parts and everything, put everything together if you're using like, and especially this impacted high-end Intel CPUs as well. But if you're using your computer and it just ends up freezing or crashing, that CPU has been affected by the microcode issue. And whenever it does that, whenever it crashes or it freezes, you are causing physical damage to the CPU simply by using it. Now, I remember at the time, it was kind of outrageous, at least in my opinion, and I don't think this is controversial to say, but I remember at the time, Intel said, hey, we're looking into this now. Right now, at the moment, we actually encourage you all to not use your computers. So, if you have another CPU, please downgrade it to a CPU which is not affected. If you don't have access to this, please do not use your computer. So there were people I knew who didn't have backup CPUs. They didn't have another desktop or another laptop they could use. They decided to do something nice for themselves. They decided to spoil themselves a little bit and build themselves a brand new Intel-based machine. And they're like, great, I just spent like $2-3 grand on this, and I literally can't use it because Intel has said until there's an update for this here to fix it, if I use my computer, I risk damaging it. And to top it all off, I remember at the time Intel even said, oh yeah, by the way, if your CPU has locked up or frozen or any of that, it's already been physically damaged by microcode. And sorry, we can't fix that. Like, it's already been physically damaged. I remember one of my, shout out to Jedge, awesome friend here, but he's a dude in my Discord server, and he's very thrifty. And he is very careful with his money. He's great with his money as well, too. But he was so frustrated because I remember he was pretty much telling us, he's like, guys, this is like the one time. This is the one time I decided to do something nice for myself and go all in and build myself something nice and expensive and brand new. This is the one time I did it, and I can't do anything. Like, and I got screwed over. And it wasn't even my fault. It's like I got screwed over. Like, I bought the parts. This issue ended up coming out later, and Intel's just telling me, don't use your computer until this is fixed. And then when it came out, again, it's fine now, but I know when it came out, they said, hey, we've identified the issue. We have now issued the fix. We provided the code to fix this to motherboard manufacturers. So now you are at the mercy of motherboard manufacturers. Please follow them, talk to them, and make sure that you have to update your BIOS, essentially. That's what they were saying. But they're like, it's completely on them. So we found the fix, we've issued it, it's going to be up to your manufacturer there. They need to put it into a BIOS update, put it out there, then you need to flash it over. But again, if you have run into any issues with your CPU freezing, sorry, it's been physically damaged. We can't do anything about that. That damage cannot be undone. So that's just kind of the stuff we're in now, where it's like, we're just running into these issues just by trying to do this here. And I think even, this will be the last thing I talk about, right? We're talking about the hardware here, and then I kind of want to talk about some other stuff, because we're about halfway through this episode, I'd say. But the other thing I know when I was like building my desktop, for example, this is using DDR5 RAM. I know in UEFI, in BIOS, there's so many more settings you need to tweak and all that stuff. So especially like enabling things like Expo or XMP so you can actually utilize the higher speeds of your RAM properly. But I have 2 sticks of RAM, and one of my best friends, shout out to Pathogen David, he was the one I was talking with about this. We were looking into this here, and I know he was kind of giving me some recommendations on, I think, like RAM and such, because I only put 2 sticks of RAM in my computer. And he was like, well, you could expand up to this. But usually before, it was like, hey, when you're doing this, typically the more RAM you throw in, the better. Obviously, you're going to have, your dual channel access and such, or I guess, yeah, just you'll have your multi-channel access there. Then you're able to really just if you can, stick with the same make, model, and especially like speeds as well too, and that usually works out pretty well. But of course, with how everything is, like XMP, Expo, things like that, you can tweak the speed of your RAM, and typically the higher speed your RAM is, then the faster it's going to perform. Like, nothing controversial there. However, from what I understand, my friend actually told me, hey, if you're actually looking for performance, you might just want to stick to 2 sticks of RAM, which is what you're doing. That's fine, because you can actually get higher speeds if you use 2 sticks as opposed to 4. And I just thought this was the dumbest thing, where it's essentially, and this is kind of another demonstration of where we're at in this transitionary period, because I'm sure whenever DDR6 comes out, this is not going to be an issue. But right now, at least with DDR5, if you have a desktop, you put 2 sticks of RAM in there, let's say you can cap out the speed at like 9,000, right? Let's say it's going to be that. If you end up putting 4 sticks in there, you're going to get more RAM. But even if you have the same make, the same model, the same sizes of sticks in there, you're not going to be able to get up to 9,000. You might be able to get up to, like, let's say in this example, like 8,000 or 8,200, something like that. And apparently from what it's been described to me is that if you put more physical RAM into your computer, if you put more physical sticks in there, there's a higher chance of errors and issues that can come about if you still stick with that high enough speed. So if you do 2 sticks, it's okay. But if you do 4 sticks, you have to sacrifice a bit of speed. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I never dealt with this with DDR3, DDR4. So am I like crying for that extra speed? Like, no, it's like, it's going to be fast enough there. But like, it was just one of those things I looked at in disbelief, and I'm like, okay, that's just where things are at. All right, this is, if I want to build a new computer with current parts right now, thankfully I'm able to do it, but that's just how transitionary period building goes, I suppose. I'm going to do this a little bit in opposite order here. Let's do that, because we'll talk about something a little more positive here. Let's say that. What I like to do on these solo episodes is I like to share a game store story or 2 or 3. And what these are is, for anybody who didn't know, I used to work at a video game shop back when I was in high school. So for about 2.5 years or so, I was working at this shop. I was still a patron, before and after, until it closed down. It was a mom and pop video game store. We had a couple of locations, and I enjoyed my time there. I also didn't like it at the same time because not like I'm trying to like complain about this. I was thankful for the opportunity. There's obviously much more demanding jobs out there. But at the end of the day, it is a retail job. Yes, you are working in a video game store, you're working around video games, you're talking video games, you're eating, breathing, sleeping video games, which that can be taxing as well too. I'll say that. Like, it was not just me, it was like many of my coworkers. We did not game nearly as much as we used to once we were working in a video game store. Not everyone runs into that, but that is kind of a common sort of trope that does happen with it. So it's ironic, but that's how it is there. Either way, like I said, it's running into it's a retail job at the end of the day. So I've got a few here. Now, there were kids who would come in, all the time, of course, and we didn't really run into issues with too many kids. Occasionally you'd have one. I remember like there was one who was like trying to like climb the racks to get to a game, and I had to kind of like raise my voice. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And I'd end up getting the game for him. There'd be kids who were asking like a bunch of questions and all that stuff. That's fine. We didn't really run into the issue of free babysitting, thankfully, because we didn't have any kiosks or any demonstrations or anything. So we also didn't even have an accessible bathroom. The bathrooms were private. We did not open them to the public, and we got a lot of nasty looks about that. But that's just how it was. So yeah, thankfully we didn't run into the thing where we just had like kids there for hours and hours on end. But sometimes we'd have some funny interactions. And I have a few here. One of them was like, I always thought this was cute and I appreciated this. It was when parents were trying to teach their kids how to be human. And by that, I mean, it's like, the kid's looking for a game. They find a game, they want to pay for it, but then like the parent is like 1 or 2 steps behind them, but they let the kid do the entire transaction, or they're helping out the kid, like, with the coins and, talking and things like that. And it's cool to be on the receiving end of that too, because you're helping to turn them into a human just with a little interaction like that. Because I'll say, at least myself, like, those interactions did help me out later on. So one of them was politeness. I would say most of the time they were good. Sometimes there were some kids who weren't, the best there. But this was one where it's like this parent ended up like correcting it like right in the moment. There was one time there was a kid who was maybe buying like a GameCube game or something. And I remember, I think it was like a $15 game. So it ended up coming out to like $16 and some change after tax. And, I get the game, get the case and everything, scan it in, I get the disc, pop it in. And I said, okay, that'll be 16 and some change. And the kid, he's barely tall enough to get to the counter, but he's just kind of like, his arms are up on the counter right there. He's like looking like a little bit bummed out, right? Maybe he's just having a little bit of a sour day. And he's got $20 in his hand, and he just like throws it onto the counter. His mom, I couldn't even, like, before I could even move, his mom just immediately, she's like, no, you do not do that. This man is here. He is doing a service for you. You do not throw your money at him like that. And she ended up taking the money off the counter and put it back in his hand. And she said, here, you do not throw it at him. He is not like that. You either need to put it in his hand, or you need to place it nicely on the counter. So then I kind of just said again, I was like, okay, that'll be 16 and some change. And I put my hand out, and he gently and respectfully put the $20 in my hand. I said, thank you. I ran through the transaction. I gave him the change, put in his hand, told him to have a nice day. That was it. So I always like when there's, some good parenting there, right? So that's always nice. I remember there was another kid, just like a little interaction we had. This was a little goofy, but same thing, he's looking around for some games. I think he's with his dad, and his dad ended up giving him a bit of money, and he was coming up to purchase his like 1 or 2 games. So typically what I would do, I would, run through the transaction. Then at the end, before I'm closing out the transaction, I'm holding on to the spare change, especially if it's cash, of course. So I think there was just like some change there, and maybe like a bill or two. But I remember I gave it to the kid, and he was just a little like absent-minded in that moment there, but I kind of had my fist out, right? Almost like I was waiting for a fist bump, but I was waiting for him typically to, they put out their hand underneath my fist, and then I end up opening my fist, and I'm able to drop the change into their hand thanks to the power of gravity. So I was just, kind of standing there for a bit with it, maybe like 20, 30 seconds, and he was kind of like trying to put everything back into his wallet, and he doesn't see me at all. And then he looks up at me, and he's kind of confused for a few seconds, and then he gives me a fist bump. And I kind of smiled a bit. And I remember his dad was like, hey, buddy, like, no, he's trying to give you your change. And the kid was still kind of confused, and his dad's just like, hey, just open up your hand. So he opened up his hand. I gave him the change. The transaction was complete at that point. So those were funny interactions as well, too. I think the last kid one I could think of was, there was one kid he came in maybe 2 or 3 times, and I remember I was working with one of my coworkers before, because I remember afterwards we kind of like debriefed a bit about this, but we had a closed cabinet where it was like the cabinet was like black, but there was like a couple of glass panes, and you had to unlock them and then slide them open, and that was where we put all of our Game Boy and DS loose cartridges. So it was Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and then DS, DSi, 3DS. All those went in there. I think probably, I'm really trying to remember. I mean, we probably put all of our cartridge-ish type things in there too. Not like, I'm not talking about like Genesis, Nintendo, Super Nintendo. That was like on another end, but like all the portable stuff there. So probably like Game Gear and PSP would have been there as well too. I don't 100% remember. I think it was mainly just the Nintendo stuff there. So yeah. Either way, I remember we didn't have like the best system for some of that, where it was kind of just, we had to physically write, like if a game was on a case, it was easy enough to put that into our system and such, and it was just extra work we had to do. But it was like, some of us didn't want to do it, and then some of us weren't consistent about it, and then even the people that there were people who were doing just different things. Like one example, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but like one example was, we would look up, Here's like one dirty secret for, which isn't a huge secret, but like one dirty secret for like independent video game shops. As much as we don't like GameStop or, we're trying to like compete with like eBay and stuff, we generally get our pricing from that. We see our pricing on GameStop and we compare it to there. So GameStop, eBay, Amazon was like the third one we ended up using. But I remember one of my coworkers, he was going in and he was pricing out games, and he was thinking he was pulling the UPC for like loose games. But he was going to eBay pages and he was getting the item ID, or not the listing ID actually. And I called it out. I was like, "Hey, dude, you're getting the wrong number." And he's like, "No, I'm not." He said, "No, that's the listing ID. This is the UPC number." And he's like, "Well, no, that's not what I was told. I was told that you have to get this number." I'm like, "No, that is the listing number. That doesn't mean anything in the world of video games. You need the UPC code." And he was saying, "Well, all I know is that the boss taught me how to do this, and the boss said you need to go to this listing and you need to get this number right here." And I took a note of it. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to fight you on this. I'm just going to talk to the boss, because I had a pretty good relationship with him. So it was like within a day, I remember I had to talk to the boss, and I was like, "Hey, so I kind of just wanted to tell you about this. Like you trained our coworker here on like, finding eBay price and such." And he said, "Yeah." I was like, "So I got to show you this. You told him to get the wrong number, and he was using that number for all of the listings." And my boss was like, oh crap, which one is it? I was like, "Well, see, this is the listing number. This is the individual number of this listing itself. This doesn't mean anything. He needs to go up here and get the UPC code." And he's like, "Oh crap. Okay, cool. I'll talk to him." I was like, "Okay, cool. Please talk to him," because I tried to tell him this and he wouldn't budge, because he said that you taught him and he was just going to do what you did, even though I told him it was wrong. And my boss like, "Hey, my bad. Okay, like I'll talk to him." I was like, "Cool. Talk to him. That's going to be the only way he changes." So it was just like little processes like that. But either way, I remember there was this kid who came in, and he was a little bit annoying, but like in a funny way. I thought it was funny, at least. I could tell his mom was like a little bit annoyed just overall, but like, still her kid. She loves him, whatever, whatever it is there. And because he was just kind of a chatterbox. But he was coming in, he was buying, he went to trade in a few games. So he was trading in a few games. Once he had the value and everything, he ended up seeing a game that was over in the DS section. And it was one of those loose cartridges, and the problem was with these ones, we kind of just had stickers on there that had the price written out. So the downside is we didn't really have them consistently, even within the case itself. So there was like one copy of a game, let's say it was Chinatown Wars, there might be like 3 copies in there. One of them is $19.99, the other one is $19.99, the other one is $22.99. Just because that was the time it was priced. Typically what I would do is when people called that stuff out, I'd be all like, "Yeah, that was kind of our error with pricing. We need to update this. If you want to buy it now, I'll just sell it to you at the lowest price. So even if you want like the $22.99 copy, I'll sell it to you for $19.99. And people really appreciated that, because I'm like, "Dude, I'm not going to make you pay more for our mess up, right? Like, that's fine." So it's maybe the only thing would be like if it was like conditioned or something, but typically they were like nearly the same condition. It's not like one of them looked pristine and the other one was chewed on by a dog. But either way, he ended up looking at some games, and he ended up seeing one. And I think, let's just say for this example, he was allowed to get a game that was like $14.99 or lower. And he said, "Yeah, I want to get this one here." So my coworker goes out, she opens up the case, he points out the cartridge he wants, she brings it over, I end up scanning it in. And let's say it was like a $19.99 game, or I think it was even a little, let's say it was like a $24.99. It was something like that, right? And I remember when I rang it up, like his mom sees it and she's just like, no, like we talked about this. This was the price limit that you had. And he was like, "Well, I saw it right over there." And she's like, "No, the price is on here. Like, what does it say?" And I was like, I looked at the cartridge. I said, "Well, it says $24.99 on here." And he's like, "Well, I saw it there." And she's like, "It doesn't say it on here." He's like, well, I think I saw it like over there. I was looking in the case, and I think it had that price. But it ended up working out because, again, let's say it was like a $14.99 game. The copy I had in my hand was $24.99. But I remember looking at it, like we did a double check, and there were like multiple copies in there. And there were some that were like $17.99. So still not as low as they agreed to, but lower than $24. So I ended up using that. I was like, "Look, it's not going to be that low, but there's other copies we have there. They're $17.99. I'm willing to just sell this to you for $17.99, and of course we apply the credit to it. And you could tell the mom was annoyed, but it was kind of like one of those things. It's like, dude, you're lucky. It's not that big of a difference. It's only a $3 difference. So she pretty much said, she's like, okay, we'll do it. But like, dude, you need to pay more attention. You need to pay more attention to that. We said like $14.99. You're bringing a game that's more. I'm sure he was happy with his game, though. I don't remember what it was. I just remember that reaction was funny to me. So you run into some of those characters, which is, kind of the good and bad thing about retail there. So those were some of the stories I had, just some of the random ones I was thinking of there. But, at the end of this here, I would like to talk about what games I'm playing, which is kind of what I usually try to talk about here at the end of these episodes. So there's been 3 games I've been consistently playing here. One of them is, of course, Ring Fit Adventure. I end up beating it for, depending on how you're counting, the 9th or the 3rd time. And the reason why I say that is because if you go through Ring Fit Adventure, there's and every time you beat it, you end up getting the credits rolling. But there's like the standard first 23 worlds. And then there's a harder version where there's another 23 worlds. And then there's an even harder version where there's another 23 worlds. And I always, when I play through this game, because I'm still using it to exercise, Monday through Friday, whenever I can. I'm pretty good about it, but occasionally I miss it here and there. Like, there might be a day or so that I miss it. But either way, you go in there, and it, like I said, depends on how you're counting. I personally do count, like, every single time you beat it on a difficulty that is clearing out the game. So to my count, I've now finished this game 9 times, I believe. So on the 10th playthrough, and what I do is I always just go right back to the beginning, and I start playing it all over from the beginning, but I still keep my character. So I have like all the power-ups, all the levels, everything there, and it's still a challenge as well too. So it's been good. This one might be a little bit controversial, and I think it's because, I'll explain it here. Another game I've been playing and actually enjoying, and someone told me something along these lines, right? It was like, I think it was a post on Blue Sky, like it was a reply. But I might be the only person out there who's going to say something good about this game. I've been playing Nintendo Switch 2 World Tour. It was one of the games, I only have 3 Switch 2 titles, because I don't really count like the upgrades, I suppose, because I have the Zelda upgrades just because they came with my Nintendo Switch Online service, but I don't really count those. So the only 3 games I have for the Switch 2 are Mario Kart World, Deltarune, because I got the Switch 2 version, and then Nintendo Switch 2 World Welcome Tour, my bad. So I've been playing it, and I will say, I've actually really been enjoying it. Is it the greatest game? No. In terms of tech demos, I would say Wii Sports is better. I'd also say Astrobot is great as well, too. That one's actually not even great. It's fantastic, in my opinion. But Welcome Tour, I think it really begins and ends with people being upset that it wasn't a pack-in game or it wasn't a free game. And that I will agree with. I think it should have been a pack-in title. I think it should be a free title, but it's only $10. So I end up spending the $10. If you disagree with it, hey, just don't buy it. Just let me be the dumb guy who ends up buying it, right? But I'll say this, that's pretty much been the main thing, and that's been the main driver against the, against the support of it. Because I haven't, like, out of people who've actually played it, which is kind of rare when you see it, I haven't seen, like, okay, I'll put it like this. All the people I've seen complain about this game have not bought the game. That's kind of consistently what I'm seeing. It's a lot of people who are upset about it, they don't like it, but they haven't paid for it. I ended up buying it, I've been trying it out, and I've been going through it very slowly, right? But it's really charming because it's not for everyone. I will admit I'm a little bit of a nerd about this, right? So like this just tickles me, and there is a decent, it's mostly reading, so you're going to have to read a lot. There's quizzes on there. It's not going to be for everyone. I'm not here telling you that it's the most fun game ever. I'll actually even say one person was trying to say that it wasn't quite Astrobot, but it was incredibly deep and it was really, really fun and something that you should really try out. No, I don't think this is worth comparing to Astrobot or Wii Sports because it's so different. Because essentially you play as a little character, like you pick your character at the beginning, and you are running through an expo like E3 or Gamescom or something else. Like you're physically going to this expo, except it's all about the Switch 2. And you are walking all over the Switch and going inside of the Switch. So you're getting to learn about the left Joy-Con, the right Joy-Con, the dock, the camera, the Switch itself, and then you can go inside of the Switch. And as somebody who, like, I've taken apart a few Switches, I've taken apart a lot of Joy-Cons, that has tickled me so much, and like I have loved that going into it and like learning more about the system and its capabilities. And there's stuff that's really cool there. Like there's been a few times I actually, like, I see someone experience it, go to my girlfriend, I'm like, hey, you got to see this, you got to see this. And I think like the most exciting one was when they were discussing how the vibration ends up working, like the rumble on the Switch 2 Joy-Cons themselves. It is different than other ones. And I won't like go in and spoil it, and you can look it up as well too to see like how other controllers work versus how this one is. But it's at the point where, because of how it is designed, you can actually generate sound from the rumble motors themselves. And actually rumble motors not accurate on here. But the point is the controllers do not have speakers, but you can make them make chimes and sounds just from that vibration function alone, which is really awesome to see. I feel like a lot of these features really aren't going to be used by games, so it's cool to see at least the capabilities in a technical setting that are there, and that's what I love about this. So there's been that, and overall it's been cool to see. It's also, I will say this to me alone was worth it for the $10. I can now safely say, and this has been really liberating, that's the best way I can describe it, I can safely say I don't care about HDR. I see the benefits of it, I can see the difference, but I don't care about HDR. HDR is something I've been struggling with my eyes since maybe 2019, let's say. Yeah, I'd say 2019. That's about right. That's when I ended up getting my first HDR capable TV. I had the PS4 Pro hooked up to it. I still use that same TV for, my Xbox Series, my PS5, even the Switch 2, and there's HDR on there. And typically if HDR is on there, like I'm just going to run it, right? But the thing I was noticing was when I was trying all this, when I would turn it on and off, it was almost a thing of like, I don't like this, but maybe it's just my TV's implementation is not good. Maybe I'm just bad at like the settings here. Maybe it's my eyesight. So I was trying to tweak all this, and there were times where I'm like, I don't see a huge difference. And even the difference I do see, I'm not really, I don't like it that much. But there's a few tech demos that talk about the screen and the capabilities and such on there, not only with the system screen, but also, what it can output to the dock. And it has a really great demonstration for HDR. Now, I know many people have said as well, too, they're like, well, the HDR on the Switch 2, the screen itself, isn't really the best, but it's enough to at least tell a story and show the difference. So I end up getting to learn that dark colors don't really make much of a difference, but bright colors is where HDR ends up shining. And it shows a really good back and forth between HDR on and HDR off. And that's when I learned, I was like, well, now I can see the difference. I could see what it's capable of, and I don't really care for it. What I do care about, though, is frame rate refresh rate on there, because there's also other demonstrations that show different frame rates and refresh rates and such, and just, playing around there. And there's also quizzes with them as well, too. So there's one of them where it's pretty much, hey, guess the frame rate here. And I was able to nail that. So I will say this. I can see the difference. It's not like there's something wrong with my eyesight. I can now confidently say I can see the difference with HDR. I do not care enough about the difference to go all in with HDR. If it looks good with HDR, wonderful. If I think SDR looks better, I'm not going to try to tweak my HDR settings and, go all in and get obsessed with that, right? But when it comes to frame rate, I will say this. This is one of those demos I can put in front of people, because there's going to be people, and I've been saying this for years, there's so many people out there like, look, if you don't care about frame rates, if you're like, look, I can play a game at 30 and it's fine if it's 30 or 60, doesn't matter, that's okay. But there's legitimately been people for years who've said there's no difference, or I can't tell a difference. And I've been telling those people for years, you need to get your eyes checked, because there is a clear difference that you can see. Even if you don't have the best eyesight, there should be a clear difference that you can see between 30 and 60, between 30 and 120 frames per second, like the refresh rate on there, or hertz, I guess we're talking about. But of course, if like the frames per second is matching, that is what I'm saying. Point is on there, if you can't tell the difference between those major jumps in frame rate, that's on you. I don't know what else to say on there, because there is a big difference and it is noticeable. So that's been my opinion on there. So it's been, again, that part alone, just being able to kind of like liberate myself of like the chase of HDR, that has been worth the $10 for me. And that is why I will say, you know what? Welcome Tour is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad at the same time. So the last game I want to talk about here, which, I'm still trying to keep this episode to be about an hour, so I can talk a ton about this game, but I'm not going to here, at least. I ended up finishing Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'm going to keep this, because we only have a few minutes to talk about it, I'm going to keep this spoiler free, but I'm going to share like my opinions and experiences on this. I will say this has probably been one of the few games in my life, and probably the only one in recent memory, where I could say that the game has absolutely lived up to the hype. Originally, I was seeing people like post about it, and they were saying, "Oh man, it's like it's like a darker, like more like in real life Persona 5." I'm like, no, I mean, I could see why people would draw that similarity, but no, it's not like Persona 5. It is not. I know a lot of people have drawn parallels to Final Fantasy X. I could see that as well too, except I believe, not even believe, the battle system, everything set up on this is deeper than there, and it makes turn-based combat so much more fun with how engaging it is. I'll tell you all, there were battles I was doing in this game that were taking me 20, 30, 45 minutes. Even one was like, I think my longest one was 55 minutes. Did not feel like that. Time can like melt away from this game when you're playing it, which is also not too bad, because the other thing that appealed to me with this game was, one of my friends was telling me, he's like, dude, this game's great. It's probably my game of the year so far. And I asked how long it was, and he was like, actually, that's the best thing about it. It's not that long of an RPG. If you don't want to go all in, if you don't want to do all the stuff there, the game is about like 30 hours long. And I'm like, I'm an adult. There's sometimes like throughout a week, I might struggle to even get like 2 hours of game time in at times. This is great. Like, this sounds awesome so far. So I ended up picking it up, and, shout out, actually a couple people, shout out to one of my best friends, Sean. He's the one who kind of pushed me towards that, but I was also wanting to get a physical copy of it as well. And I was really intentional about this, right? So also another shout out to Normal Andy, one of my mutuals on Twitter and Blue Sky. Yeah, I'm still going to say Twitter. I'm not going to call it by its official name, but he was on there, and he essentially ended up buying a PS5 physical copy of it because he tried it on Game Pass, but he liked it so much he actually wanted to like play it on PS5, and he wanted a physical disc. So he essentially used Game Pass as like a rental, decided he liked it, bought the game. When I saw that there was a physical copy available, I was like, I need to look into this. I looked into it. Where I live, there was only one store. Like, out of all the stores in the area, there was only one store, and it was like a decent drive too, but there was only one store that had a brand new copy of it. So I ended up ordering it. I picked it up, brought it home. So I was happy to have a physical copy of it, installed it, started playing. And I'll tell you this, usually if a piece of media can make me cry, right? It immediately shoots into a contender for one of the best things of whatever that is. Like, whether it's a TV show, a movie, an album, a song, a game here, usually it shoots right up there. And it doesn't just have to be sad stuff. There's been one time, my game of the year one year was South Park: The Stick of Truth when it released, because that game made me cry. Not from anything sad. It was just the game was so funny. There was one night I was doubled over. I fell to the side on my couch, and I was laughing so hard that I was in pain, and I started crying a bit. Like, that's typically when I have those moments of like, yeah, this is magic right here. This is fantastic. So what I'm saying is I was not expecting this. I pretty much went into the game as blind as I could. Outside of like a few screenshots I had seen on Twitter, I didn't look at any reviews. I didn't look at any trailers. I didn't look at any perspectives, retrospectives, analysis. The closest I got was like I would look up cutscenes on YouTube because there would be things that would happen and I'd want to describe them to my girlfriend, but I would show her the actual cutscene on YouTube, but nothing in advance. And I was very careful about what I looked up because I did not want any spoilers for this. I didn't even look up a guide. Thankfully, I actually didn't need a guide for this, but I did not look up anything. And again, even with purchasing this, I was more intentional about this game. I'm a little more picky with what I buy now, but I was more intentional with this game than I've been with other games in a while. Because it was a thing of like, look, I want a physical copy of it. At the time when I bought it, I was like, I'm going to be running into a time period where I'm actually going to have more time to lock down and play some games. So I am going to go out of my way, find a physical copy, and pay full price for it because not only I do want to support this because I love what these developers and this publisher is doing here, I also love that it's not a $70 or $80 or even $60 game. It is a $50 game. So it's not even a full priced game, but $50 is the MSRP. And it was at the point to me, I said, you know what? Even if I buy this and in 2 days it goes on sale, which it probably won't, but even if it does, I'm going to be okay with this because I want to support this game and I want to play it right now. I don't want to play it when there's a sale. I don't want to wait for this. I have this open opportunity to start playing, like sink my teeth into an RPG, and damn it, I'm going to take it. And damn it, I was really happy that I did that. So point is, what I was saying about the tear part, like crying and everything, was this game ended up hitting me with the tears within an hour. And I'm like, dude, I haven't even finished the intro yet. So like, this is going to be magical. And it ended up being legitimately one of the best games I've ever played. It is now one of my favorite games. It is fantastic. It's one of those games where I'm sure I'm echoing a lot of other people's sentiments here, but I haven't been as thoughtful or as obsessed or like thinking about a game after I've played it. I haven't been at this point with my games since I was a kid. And the one that I went like the craziest on was Kingdom Hearts. Absolutely loved it, was really obsessed with it. And it's still, you know, I still have a pretty big soft spot for it. But the thing I was telling people was I said, you know, no disrespect to Kingdom Hearts, but I feel like Expedition 33 kind of caused me to graduate from Kingdom Hearts, if that makes sense. Because even maybe, you know, I'll go ahead and drop this, right? I'll drop this, be like the only story bit I share. The characters that you're playing as, with a few exceptions here and there, they're all in their early 30s. They're not like spry teenagers. They're not like 20-something-year-olds trying to, you know, figure out what's happening in the world. They're all in their early 30s. And on top of that, they all look pretty good as well, too. So it's not just like they look like ancient or anything, right? So that was also another thing. I'm like, you know, like as someone who is in that exact age group right now, it's like this is even more. It's even more powerful because it's something that I can like connect to in a way, because it's one of those things with my media that I watch or I consume. If I really like it, I like to get into it. And I'm sure other people have run into this where, like, let's say there's an anime you really like, or like, let's actually Persona 5, we can talk about this. I'm sure people who were in high school who played Persona 5, or maybe even just outside of it, maybe they were like just, you know, entering those college years. I'm sure they played through Persona 5 and they were like super into it because the characters are teenagers in there. But if you're, let's say, a 45-year-old man and you're playing Persona 5, I'm not saying you can't enjoy it, but it's going to be stuff of like, well, how much can I relate to like a 15 or a 16-year-old in here, like playing as these characters? So not really sure. So it kind of adds that extra depth that is really nice in there. and just extra connection, of course. I won't say too much else about it. I'll just say that this game, in my opinion, it deserves everything good that is coming to it. But if you are going to pick this up and play this game, please go into it as blind as possible. And please don't look up stuff. Don't try to figure things out. Don't watch anything. Don't even listen to the soundtrack outside of the game until you finish the game. And I will actually put a warning on that. The reason why I say that is because if you go and you just, like, you're really liking the music and you want to listen to it, if you go and pull it up on Spotify or YouTube Music or whatever you're going to use, you're going to get spoiled immediately. I'm not talking about, like, listening to songs that are, that have come, like, that haven't come to that point in the game. Like, you might hear some really epic, like, boss battle songs that you're still 10 or 15 hours away from hearing. I'm even talking about just like the titles that can spoil it for you. So that's going to be like my main recommendation. Like, go as blind as you can into Expedition 33 if you're going to play it. And I would recommend it to people. I think, sorry, last thing I'll say, and then we'll do the outro here. It's been this type of game, because I love this, right? But it's been the type of game I've really only seen, like, I believe there's only like two groups of people who would dislike this game. One group of people is going to be the people who just, this simply doesn't click for them. It's not their type of game. It's not their type of story. And let's say you're someone who, and I used to look down on people like this, but now that, I've seen a little more and I understand, I'm like, no, this is fine. Let's say if you're a person who, you do play video games, but the only games you play, you pick up the new Madden every year. Maybe now you're picking up the new college football, or maybe you just like pick up the new FIFA every single year. Is it called FIFA? I don't think it's called FIFA anymore. I think it's called FC. But let's say you just pick up those games every year, right? You're probably not going to be crazy about this game. Like, if you play it and you try it and you like it, that's awesome. But if you're like that kind of gamer, there's probably not much here for you, and that's okay. But if you want to give it a try, I'm not saying don't try it. I'm just saying, like, if you're that type of gamer, you just might not be crazy about it, and I'm not going to hold it against you. The other group of people is people who essentially try to just sit down and go out of their way to not enjoy the game. So there's going to be people who are going to complain about every little thing. They're going to pick everything apart. They're going to roll their eyes at so much stuff. They're going to put more effort into hating the game rather than just sitting back and letting the game come to them and enjoying it. And to that, it's like, it's not even exclusive to Expedition. It's just like, dude or girl or whoever you are, like, can you just stop like what you're doing? Can you just like stop and just like allow yourself to enjoy the game? It's not illegal. Like, just enjoy it. That's it. So that's like the only other type of person I've really seen who might not like this game, is just people who will go out of their way to not like a game, especially if it's like, the biggest game out there, the biggest game in the world, something really popular like Expedition here. Yeah, and to those people, I'm just going to dismiss their opinions, because it's like, well, you're not even trying to like the game. You're actually actively in the mode trying to dislike it and finding every reason to dislike it. So your review and your opinion is quite disingenuous. And it wouldn't just be with this game because I like it. It's like that with any game they would do that to. That's my opinion on there. Either way, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. This has been a fun one to do. If you've made it to the end of this episode, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your listenership and everything, because, you could be doing something else. Maybe you are, because if you're only watching this, I mean, props to you, but I don't really want people Mario's minute maxing in that regard. But you could be listening to anything else, and you're here hanging out listening to this, and I truly appreciate that. Thank you. But let's go ahead and do a keyword. If you haven't made it to the end of these episodes, first of all, welcome to the end. Secondly, I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase. And if you use that keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. So I am holding... Yeah, I'm holding. Sometimes I like to play with this, right? I have this on my desk. I have a fidget cube here. If you don't remember these, or like they came out around the time when fidget spinners ended up getting really popular, which is honestly one of those like physical item fads that I was perfectly okay with. When like everybody started getting obsessed with them, everybody wanted them. People who had 3D printers who knew about them for years, man, they started making bank on those. They were problems in schools apparently. Like everybody was getting their fidget spinners taken away. They were a distraction. But I was like, you know what? I actually like this. Like I really like this distraction. I really like this fad. I know it's not going to be here forever, but this is nothing bad. This is just, I enjoy it. Like I think it's cool to see. I didn't really mess with the fidget spinner. I got a few of them. I spun them, and I'm like, well, that was fun for like 10 seconds, but that's it. But the fidget cube I've enjoyed. Like it has like a nice little like switch and some buttons and like some other things that you can do. Like listen to that. Oh, that's a switch they put on here. That is satisfying right there. That is nice and satisfying. So occasionally I have this on my desk, and occasionally I just, like press a few things on it. It's nice. But let's go ahead and use the word cube. Have you messed with a fidget cube? Do you still have a fidget cube? Maybe somewhere in storage or wherever. How do you like the GameCube? Did you have a GameCube back in the day? Do you like your food cube shaped? I don't know. Let me know. If you use the word cube in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. And either way, that's about the end of this episode here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated. And if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next month.